Hi guys, so if you've been following my channel the last few months, you know that I got stuck in Budapest during the lockdown, and as you can probably tell from the background here and the title of this video, I am back in Italy now. I wanted to tell you guys all about that, which is actually not at all as simple as just booking a flight like it used to be. When I made the video, Hungary is not a dictatorship, was the 3rd of May. That day, the restrictions eased up in Hungary outside of Budapest. There were also some changes in Germany and France. Italy officially went into phase 2. There were some changes here as well. I even mentioned in the video that I saw there were some flights to Italy in about 2 weeks. The way it works is the airline has the right to cancel the flight if it's more than 2 weeks out. They don't have to compensate you. I think what they do, they wait until just before they're under that 2-week mark to take the flights offline. I saw this flight, it was on the site, chatted with them, called them back and forth so many times, just like trying to get things sorted out and make sure that my flight was changed from the original flight in March to the flight that I wanted, the 25th of May. And the issue I was having was that they wanted to charge me a fee to change the flight, and I wasn't supposed to be charged a fee because my original flight in March was canceled with less than 2 weeks notice. I had to argue with them about that, and then finally they agreed. They said that the flight was reserved and I just needed to wait for an email. And then I'm thinking, this fee that they wanted to charge me for changing my flight, I'm pretty sure that's the actual full price of the flight because it only costs about like 8 or 10 euros. I went to check the website and I see that all of the flights are gone. So then I called them back again. The guy tells me all of the flights are canceled until July. So there will be no flights in May, no flights in June. And I'm kind of confused. I was expecting cases to surge once the restrictions eased up. It hasn't happened so far. So why would they be canceling all these flights? If they are canceling them, it's probably something that was government mandated and they don't have a choice. So then I see this other airline that has flights listed in June, and I'm thinking, okay, well, June is like 3 weeks away. Chances are those flights will be taken offline in another week, because I can't imagine the one airline would cancel all their flights and the other one wouldn't. There's no way for me to reach someone at this other airline to verify, so there's no way for me to get more information there. Since there was an Italian staying in the hostel with me, he had been in contact with the embassy and he knew that there was this repatriation flight being offered. From what I've deduced, this is the first repatriation flight that's been offered since the lockdown started. Anyone who was stuck on holiday or lost their job or whatever just had to wait the last 2 months for this flight to be offered. The only other way to get back to Italy, because there was no Flixbus, no blah blah car, there was basically just renting a car. So something he had looked into. He said there was one car rental company that would allow you to leave the car in Italy. The fee for leaving the car and not returning it was going to be the most expensive part of the rental, so it was going to come out to a total of like 1,000 euros. I looked into other rental companies and it really wasn't that expensive to rent a car, but with those companies you weren't allowed to leave the car behind. If I had taken the car to Italy and then restrictions had continued and I wasn't able to return the car to Hungary, I would have been charged for however many weeks it took until I was able to return the car. Not to mention, as much as I love driving, that would have been a very long drive and just, you know, incredibly exhausting. So then I want to find out more about this repatriation flight, but the Italian who told me about it managed to find a new job, so he's not interested anymore. I tried to contact the embassy, the Italian embassy in Budapest. To my surprise, they don't speak English. They speak Hungarian and Italian. I have contacted other embassies where the language of neither country is English, that spoke English. They had it on the recording and everything. In this case, didn't go too well. They basically just said I should have someone else call for me who can speak Italian. So I had my friend call the embassy for me, and the embassy said he would have to call the immigration police at the airport to find out if I would be allowed on the flight. So I called them, and they said the current legislation doesn't allow me to return, but Conte announced some changes and maybe starting the following week I would be allowed to return to Italy. But as far as we knew, the flight was only being offered once. We have no idea if there are going to be other flights or how long it's going to be. So I had my friend contact them. He sent an email explaining the situation. Then they wrote back, if you manage to purchase the ticket, we'll let you through. So we're like, okay, well, I don't think purchasing the ticket is going to be the problem. I go on the website. I'm ready to buy the ticket. It is a lot more expensive than what I would have paid with one of these like normal cheap flights. To the point where I was kind of considering, is it really worth paying all of this money to be on this expensive flight? Maybe it would be better to just stay in Budapest. But the problem is, I don't know if there's going to be flights in June or July or how long this is going to go. Even if the flight in June is not canceled, that's 3 more weeks. The amount of money that I would spend on that flight would ultimately come out to about the same as what I would spend staying in Budapest for 3 more weeks. And then if the cheap flights in June were canceled and I had to get on the next repatriation flight, I would be paying twice as much. If there was no more repatriation flight offered and the cheap flights were canceled, then I would be totally stuck. I decided to go ahead, take the flight. Well, I make it sound easy, but I was incredibly indecisive, as I always am, trying to wait until the last minute. Like, I was really gonna book the day of. Crossed my mind, what if I'm the only person on this flight? I got on the website to see if I could see how many seats were filled. I couldn't find the flight anymore. It wasn't listed. It had disappeared. It was like just under 24 hours to go. I was getting nervous. It did let me go back in the browser and open that page again. I wanted to see if it would let me book, because I was thinking if it vanished from the website, probably got canceled. Even if it didn't, it's probably not going to let me book. In that moment, I was actually leaning more toward just staying in Budapest and waiting for this cheap flight. It all just felt a bit too sudden. I wasn't ready to leave yet. There was more stuff that I was trying to do in the meantime. So it was like I was ready to go. I was gonna get on the flight, and then I started leaning more back in the direction of staying longer. And then I see the flights vanish from the website. Purely out of curiosity, I want to see if I'm still able to book this flight, and I want to know for sure if it's been canceled. I tried to book it. It went through. The flight was booked, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna be on that flight then. I'm heading to the airport the next day. That was a whole fiasco because there's normally the airport express bus. I was coming from one metro stop away, so I decided to check Google Maps and see if there was a better way to get there. Honestly, being in Budapest makes me question my trust of Google Maps. Instead of taking the metro, it told me to take the tram, even though they both stop at the same spot, but it was equal distance, so it was okay. And then I end up at the train station, and I'm thinking I'm supposed to take a bus because normally I take the bus to the airport. After wandering around the train station, finally it registers, oh, I'm supposed to take a train. And then I'm going toward the platform. I see that there's construction. You have to go down through this passageway back up the other side. I go down and I get on the other side, and then there's like a shopping center, and I don't know how to get out again. And then I get up, I see the platform. I have like 1 minute till the train leaves. I'm like trying to jog a little bit toward the train. I finally got my mask to stop fogging up my glasses, so I kept it on the whole time since I got out of the tram. Gone from just getting sweaty and uncomfortable to really I can't breathe, and now like my glasses are fogging up. But at that point I'm at the train and I have to keep the mask on, so I'm like trying to like hold it a little bit away from my face just while I cool down a bit. And then I had to buy a ticket in the train, which is a lot more expensive than they normally are. And then the train stops near the airport. It doesn't take you directly to the airport. There's like this overpass over the rails that I have to cross over. I go around to the elevator and I see the elevator isn't there yet. They're working on installing it right then. So I have to go up like 2 stories worth of stairs, cross over the street, and then there's a sign that says, this is Terminal 1. There are no flights being offered. You need to go to Terminal 2. So I have to go back up the stairs, across the street, and then down on the other side of the train tracks, which is like in the middle, in order to catch the normal airport bus to go to Terminal 2. There's this announcement in the bus, flights are going from Terminal 2A and Terminal 2B, either one. And I walk in, there's like nothing there. It's construction, it's like brand new. I walk down to the other end and suddenly I see this really long line of people. There's a guy from the airport asking, where are you going? He says, yes, you need to get in this line. I realize that all of the people in this line are on the flight to Italy. I'm definitely not the only one. I sit down on the ground so that I can reorganize some stuff, make sure my liquids are all in the bag I'm gonna check. As soon as I sit down, I just feel the energy drain out of me. I'm so exhausted from everything that it took to get to the airport. Guy walks past again and I was like, can I have a wheelchair? Normally I do have a wheelchair. This flight wouldn't let you choose seats or any accommodations you needed. So he goes and gets a wheelchair, comes back. this straight line that everybody's standing in is to get their temperature checked. I basically get whisked to the front of the line. They check my temperature. I was afraid that my temperature would be too high because when I overexert myself and I'm kind of like in a crash, my temperature does go up, but I believe it's lower than what technically qualifies as a fever. So I go past, you know, after the straight line with the thermometer, there's the like normal zigzagging line to check in and get your boarding pass. And I'm taken to the front of that line, and then they're like, are you an Italian citizen? Are you an Italian resident? I'm like, no. So then of course we have a problem. And I said, I already talked to the Polaria, the immigration police at the airport where I land, and they've told me it's gonna be fine. I have documents, I have this email and everything, but it's in Italian. So these people in Hungary can't read it. They don't have anyone there who speaks Italian. And I'm like, if you guys just let me on the flight, then when I arrive, I can explain it to the people there, but it's kind of hard to prove it to you guys. So they said that they're gonna have to contact the Polaria themselves and verify that I'm allowed to be on the flight. And it just took a really long time for them to make this call. Everybody had gone through the line. The people doing the check-ins were ready to go as soon as they got through the line. So they printed out my boarding card real quick, but they still hadn't made the call. Finally, they make the call. They ask to see this one document I have, and then they tell me it's okay. The guy pushing the wheelchair like takes me towards security, and I'm like, well, what about my backpack with my liquids? And he's like, no, it'll be fine. I was like, really? You sure? Yeah, we'll do it at security. Okay. So then we get to security, and they start separating my liquids between what is small enough to pass and what's too big and needs to be thrown out. Interestingly enough, I had a couple things that were a little bit too big, but they were mostly empty, and they said it was okay. Last time I flew, I had to throw those things out. Then I'm like, well, I don't want to throw out the things that are too big. That's why I said I wanted to check the bag. And then he's like, oh, we have to go all the way back, get all of my bags out of the scanner, like back on the other side of security, go back to the check-in counter, check the bag, go all the way back to security, take my bags out again, put them through the scanners again, get me through security, and go get to board this flight. We get to the gate, and then it turns out there's this piece of paper. At check-in, they were asking if everybody had it. Some people had printed it off and filled it out already. Because of what was going on, nobody ever asked if I had it. So we get to the gate, they realize I don't have it. I have to fill it out real quick. I don't speak Italian. They're like getting the stack of papers and like looking at the answers to try and help me figure out what I'm supposed to fill out, but it's really rushed. Like put down whatever, and then I hand the paper over to them. I'm able to get on the flight. The flight attendants are speaking Italian first with everyone because, you know, everyone there is supposed to be Italian.
Osservate come allacciare, stringere, slacciare la cintura di sicurezza. I bambini tenuti in braccio devono essere assicurati con apposite cinture fornite dagli assistenti di volo.
Everyone's wearing masks the whole time. Then at one point they made an announcement saying this isn't our regular service. We apologize and we hope you don't take this as a reflection of us. And I'm thinking they're saying that they're not going to be serving food, but actually they served food right after that. It was all glutinous, but I was really hungry, so I decided to risk eating it anyway. But there was just this moment where I was like, okay, everybody's eating at the same time, which means we're all taking our masks off. We're in this plane with the recycled air, like, if we can take our masks off now, why are we even wearing them at all? Like, what's the point, really? We flew over Croatia, which was absolutely beautiful. And I believe that used to belong to Hungary. Look at that beauty that they stole from Hungary. No, I don't know all of the history that much in detail. It was basically like, as soon as we like passed Croatia, like 10 minutes later, we were basically at land at the edge of Italy. And right at that point, they're like, we're beginning our descent, we're gonna land in 20 minutes. And I was like, we're gonna be all the way on the other side of Italy, landing in Rome in 20 minutes? Like, what? So we land the flight. I'm waiting for the wheelchair. I've already taken my first gen antihistamines because of the gluten, so I'm kind of drowsy, but I thought I was gonna have to justify my presence after I arrived. And since I did it before, I thought, okay, I'm in the clear. There's not gonna be any issues. It's okay if I'm drowsy. So then the wheelchair comes and the lady's like pushing me up the ramp, which I feel really bad for. Then the flight attendant comes out and she says something, da 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 la ragazza, and I was like, you know, I turned around and I was like, oh shit, my maps. I left my maps. Someone brought them up to me. I'm like so glad I didn't lose them on the flight. So then she pushes me out and we get to this thing where they're checking your temperature again, and I'm thinking again, I probably have a temperature because I just ate gluten and I'm really not feeling great. Luckily I managed to get by, and then there's like these little stations with desks where everyone is filling out this form again. Nobody there speaks English. The lady pushing the wheelchair like does her best to ask the questions and translate the answers. We leave the form there with them, and then we're able to continue out. We go to baggage claim to get my backpack. While we're at baggage claim, I'm like, okay, we're through, we made it, I get to stay. Now I can book my train ticket from Rome to the place I'm staying. This flight stopped in Rome and Milan, but the reason that I got out in Rome was because it landed an hour earlier. There are not very many trains running. That was the only way that I could get on a train and get to my destination that night. Because if I left from Milan an hour later, there were no more trains. And this was at like, we landed at 6 in the evening, and the one in Milan was at 7. It wasn't very late, but their trains are only being offered every few hours. So while we're waiting for my backpack, I booked the ticket. The lady takes me to the train station in the airport, and the police there are asking questions about where I'm coming from, where I'm going, and she's telling them everything. And we realize there's a problem, but nobody there speaks enough English to really explain to me what's going on. I called my friend. I was like, I understood something they were saying about like I need to take a taxi or whatever. So they get on the phone, they explain it to him. They said that if you're coming from abroad, you're not allowed to use public transport. You have to be picked up from the airport or take a taxi. Obviously, I'm not about to pay for a taxi for like a 5-hour drive. This wasn't mentioned by the embassy or the airline or the Polaria or anyone until it was too late. My friend had even said the day before, maybe I'll drive to Rome and pick you up. But we're like, you know, why would you do that? I can just take the train. Well, at that point, I'm standing in the airport, nothing left to do. We find out he's gonna have to drive all that way to come and pick me up. I still had like an hour before the train left, and I'm trying to think if there's any other solution. And I'm like, okay, the people at the train station in the airport would obviously recognize me even if I came back walking. My hair and everything just kind of stands out. Even though I had to hand in a declaration when I got on the plane and when I got off of the plane, I had another one that they gave me on the plane that you're supposed to keep with you at all times when you're out in public in Italy. I hadn't filled it out yet, but I'm sitting there. I know I can't get on the train. I'm thinking, you know, my friend's gonna have to drive 5 hours to pick me up, 5 hours back home. So I'm like, the train is supposed to go from this station at the airport to one of the other stations in Rome, and then I'm supposed to switch to a long distance train to get to my destination. And I'm like, what if I can board the train at another station and I just say that I'm coming from Rome? Like, I put a local address on the form and pretend that I'm not coming from abroad and go with that. And my friend's like, you know, you can't just put some random address, because he's been stopped before and they wanted to know his landlord's name and phone number. They actually called to verify. They're really strict. So you would have to put the address of someone you know who's actually, you know, on board with this plan. And I'm thinking, I have a friend who got stuck in Rome with her boyfriend because of the lockdown, and maybe I can use their address. But that sounds like a really sketchy plan that probably nobody's gonna be on board with. I wasn't gonna do it, and then finally I decided to call. And she said what we can do maybe is come and pick you up and drive you to the other station, because if you take a taxi, it's gonna cost like 50 euros. But they live like 30 minutes away, and by that point I have like just under an hour, and there's really like no way that I'm gonna make it in time. So we're like, okay, what now? So her boyfriend says he's gonna come pick me up. She's afraid to come in the car with him because they're really strict about only having one person from the household pick you up. When he got there, he said if you don't live in the same household together, then the passenger's supposed to sit in the back, so I couldn't even sit in the front next to him. At that point, they said like it had already been declared that starting the next week, you would be allowed to visit your friends at home, but at the time it was technically illegal for me to go over to their house and hang out with them. My friend that was coming to pick me up was saying he could put that he's going to the airport on his form, and if he got stopped outside of Rome, that would be okay because they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But if he got stopped within the city, they could tell that he's going the wrong direction. He could get in big trouble. Anyways, I ended up not catching the train, and my friend came to pick me up. It was this whole like really awkward reunion because we were like standing out in public and we're wearing masks, and we're like, you know, normally we would like hug or faire la bise or something, and we were just like kind of standing at this mandated distance. And it was really strange for me because in Hungary you only have to wear masks if you're indoors in a public place. There aren't nearly as many rules. And if you think about it, if you remove the statistics from northern Italy, the degree of infection, like the number of cases in the rest of Italy, wasn't that bad. So like the lockdown that they're experiencing in the whole country is like a little bit like unproportional to how many cases there are in most of Italy. Places like Rome and Tuscany and like everywhere outside of northern Italy, they weren't that badly hit, but they're living under this really strict authoritarian rule that is starting to ease up now. But, you know, it's like, compared to what I've been experiencing in Hungary, it's like, it's very strange and new and just like, oh wow, like that's actually a rule. And, you know, it's like one person in the elevator at a time. Maybe some people in Budapest would have chosen to go one by one in the elevator, but in Italy, it's actually mandated. It was a bit of a culture shock for me to be in Italy because the rules were a lot stricter than what I was used to. Very different experience, even though we're already in phase 2 and things have eased up and I missed the strictest part of it. I did leave the airport to go to my friend's place that day, even though you weren't allowed to go visit your friends. While my friend was driving to pick me up, he put that he was going to the airport on his form, and then when we left, we both put that we were leaving from that address because we didn't want to be stopped and have them see that we're clearly not coming from the airport because it's 30 minutes away. It's a totally different part of town. But we felt that we did have a legitimate reason because of my health problems and because I had eaten gluten early that day. It was justifiable. Also, the whole situation with me not being able to take the train was totally unexpected. There have been stories of the police just making things up that are not actual mandated rules. So we were thinking if we got stopped and we got in trouble, it would be better to say this is what the police told us to do and possibly expose them for doing something wrong than for us to get caught in a lie and get in trouble. But fortunately, we were not stopped at all. Starting the following Monday, like 3 days later, people were allowed to move freely within their region. They no longer have to carry these forms with them every time they leave the house. But I am technically under quarantine for 2 weeks because I'm coming from another country, which makes absolutely no sense to me that every country has this rule because every country is affected, so what difference does it make? But I feel really lucky that I am staying where I currently am, where I can walk around this property without having to actually leave and go someplace public. Being chronically ill, it's not like I go out that much anyways. You guys see me filming outside. I really only go outside to film. So for me, 2 weeks of quarantine is nothing. I guess I'll see you guys back here next week.